Now, shall we begin?
And hello everybody, and welcome to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host, Christian. Thank you very much for joining me on the podcast this week. This is, of course, the podcast where we talk about all the latest breaking movie news and all trailers that have come out this week and the movies that are coming out in theaters this weekend for all your viewing pleasures. And of course, we'll go on some tangents along the way as well. But hello, welcome. My name is Christian. I think I said that already. Can't remember now. But hello, welcome to the Movie Pit Podcast. This week is kind of a slow week. It's surprisingly slow. So forgive me for, I guess, the short podcast this week, although it's not my fault. Yeah, this week was pretty short. There's been a lot of teaser trailers that have come out this week. Nothing like too big noteworthy that's really exciting, but at least for me. But I will talk about those teaser trailers. And some of the news items, I mean, they're not, epically big, but they're still pretty noteworthy. So we're going to have a podcast this week. And we got a very long list of movies coming out in theaters this weekend. So let's not waste any more time and get right to it, shall we? Let's talk about the news items that came out after the podcast came out last week. Now, it's been a while since we've done this because there's been no real noteworthy news items that have come out after the podcast has gone up, but that changed. I think last week we had some news items to talk about, or the week before, something like that, but this week is no different. Of course, one of the news items we are going to talk about is the Oscars, but before we get to the Oscars, we're going to talk about one massive noteworthy news item that came out, which is the Flash movie. The Flash movie officially signs on its directors. Now, back in January, yes, all the way back in January. I know it's March already, but it feels like a long time now. Reports broke out that Spider-Man Homecoming writers and directors of the currently released comedy Game Night, which if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend you do, John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein were in negotiations to direct the new Flash movie for the DCEU. However, when they were doing press rounds for Game Night, the duo said their deal wasn't done, so they couldn't have start officially working on the film or the project at all. That has now changed, obviously, as the duo have officially signed a deal to direct the DCU. Now, the news came from Collider first, and they went off the tweet that was sent out by Daily with an image of the Flash and the caption that said, "It's happening." So that pretty much confirms it. However, it's unclear, though, if the duo will be writing the script from scratch or if they'll be working from an already existing script. Now, we've talked a lot about the Flash on the podcast. One of the big things that we talked about was the fact that the Flash movie went through a page one rewrite. Now, that was last year. That was kind of in the summer. So it's, the Flash has been a very talked about film throughout the movie community, especially throughout all the comic book fan community. So we don't know if they're going to be working off a new script or they can create one, but considering their work with Spider-Man Homecoming and with Game Nights, I think we're in good hands if they want to take over writing the screenplay. Now, of course, there has to be some slight cautiousness with the casting of these two. The Flash movie, again, besides going to the page one rewrites, has had a very troubled history with keeping directors on board. Although they never officially signed on, Phil Lord and Chris Miller were eyeing to direct. I believe they actually wrote the first draft of the script before they dropped out because they went to go direct Solo, a Star Wars story, which we all know how that turned out for them. So after that, Seth Grahame-Smith came on board. He was the writer for films like Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. He also wrote the book, which is actually much better than the movie, but this is a movie podcast. He also had a hand in writing the Lego Batman movie. He boarded as a writer and director, but he left due to creative differences. This also would have been his directorial debut, which he has still not made yet. So there was that. This led to Rick Famuyiwa, the director of Dope, to come on board to write and direct the movie, and he even casted Kiersey Clemons, who he worked on Dope, as Iris West, and he also casted Billy Crudup to play Henry Allen, which is Barry Allen's father. And Billy Crudup did appear in Justice League, and he, of course, is going to have probably a bigger role in the Flash movie. But Famuyiwa later dropped out as well over creative differences. And of course, everyone was starting to get a little frustrated with that. Like, obviously, Warner Brothers even eyed Robert Zemeckis for a little bit. Of course, the director of Back to the Future movies and Flight and Castaway, but they couldn't lock him down. So the project went on with more rewrites, and finally we've landed on John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein. Now, the Flash movie will take the arc from the comics called Flashpoint, which involves time travel. The gist of it is that Barry goes back in time to stop something from happening, something traumatic in his past from happening, and doing so creates a new timeline that essentially changes a lot of things. People aren't who they're supposed to be, and people who were something are now something else. So it completely changes the timeline and everything. So the TV show The Flash on the CW tackled the comic arc, and they did a decent job. A lot of people weren't completely happy with what they have done, but it did a decent job at trying to at least create the story on a TV budget. So there has to be take that into consideration as well. But Flashpoint, in a lot of ways, can also basically be the reset button for the DCU, which is something that people have been hearing rumblings about over at Warner Brothers and DC Films. Now, whether that is the case is obviously something we have to take into consideration once we find out more about the project, and once we find out more about how Daley and Goldstein are going to handle the projects. I really loved Game Night. I thought it was really funny. I thought it was really well put together, and knowing that they are self-professed nerds, it helps out. And of course, again, they wrote Spider-Man Homecoming, which brought Peter back into the Peter Parker / Spider-Man back into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I almost said DCU for a minute. But I think they're a good choice. I think they're a solid choice. Just right now, it's hard to tell and hard to be optimistic considering the troubled production The Flash has had. Because we were supposed to have this movie come out. I think it was supposed to come out this year or last year or something like that. And obviously that has not happened. So cautiously optimistic for this new pairing and this new approach of what they're doing. New approach as in new directors. So hopefully that it turns out for them, and hopefully it works. Because The Flash is very worthy of having its own, or his own movie and potentially trilogy or franchise. So we'll see. Alright, so let's talk about the other noteworthy news item that came out after the podcast went up last week, which was the Oscars. So the Oscars were, of course, on Sunday. As always, they were long, and there are a lot of people saying that it wasn't that great, and it was rather boring and predictable, and other stuff like that. But, it's the Oscars, and it's not for everyone, so there is that. But we're going to talk about the winners, because that's what I want to do. So I'm going to run down all the winners. So The Darkest Hour won for makeup and hairstyling. Phantom Thread won for costume design. Heaven is a Traffic Jam on the 405 won for best documentary short subject. I don't know why I was having trouble saying the word short. While The Silent Child won live action short film Icarus, which was about the Russian doping scandal, won for best documentary. Dunkirk swept all the sound categories in sound mixing and sound editing, as well as film editing. So Dunkirk went away with that. Kobe Bryant is now an Oscar winner because he won for the best animated short Dear Basketball, which was based off a poem that he had wrote. The animator for that project was the animator for The Little Mermaid and a bunch of the older Disney classics. So that was a nice win for him. Blade Runner 2049 ended up winning 2 awards. One of them was for Best Visual Effects. And Roger Deakins finally won the big one. He finally won his Best Cinematography Oscar for Blade Runner 2049. He had been nominated 14 times, and there you go. He finally got it. If you care, Blade Runner 2049 is also the first non-Best Picture nominee to win the category since Memoirs for a Geisha, which was 11 years ago. So apparently there's a correlation between the two. But I just thought that was an interesting tidbit, so I figured I'd pass it along. The Chilean film, A Fantastic Woman, won for Best Foreign Language Film. James Ivory won for Best Adapted Screenplay for Call Me By Your Name, which I still did not manage to see before the Oscars, so I still have to watch that. Jordan Peele won for Best Original Screenplay for Get Out, making Peele the first African-American to win the award. kudos and big congratulations to him. Best original song was for Remember Me from Coco, which was written by Kirsten Anderson Lopez and Robert Lopez, which have won the award before for Let It Go from Frozen. This win also now makes them 2-time EGOT winners. Now, the EGOTs are recipients who have won an Emmy, a Golden Globe, an Oscar, and a Tony. They've done it twice. So good for them for winning that. Speaking of Coco, Coco won for Best Animated Feature, which of course was made by Pixar. And I believe I didn't get the number for Pixar, but Pixar has won the Best Animated Feature before. I just can't remember the exact number, and I forgot to look that up before I started recording. But there is that. Gary Oldman won for Best Actor in Darkest Hour, which was no surprise by anyone. Sam Rockwell won for Best Supporting Actor for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. No surprise there either. Allison Janney won for Best Supporting Actress for I, Tonya. Yet again, no surprise there. Frances McDormand won for Best Actress for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Again, no surprise there. But she did break Google a little bit for having everyone search inclusion writer, which is a really big deal and been making waves since Sunday. Now, for those of you guys who didn't look it up or want a reminder or don't know what it is, inclusion writer is a stipulation that actors and actresses can ask for or demand to have inserted into their contracts, which would require a certain level of diversity among a film's cast and crew. Meaning, it's not just going to be a bunch of white people. And the fact that Frances McDormand took that time to do that and to say that during her acceptance speech was fairly cool on her part and fantastic. So there was that. And finally, The Shape of Water, which was nominated for the most awards going into Sunday, did end up winning big. They won for Best Production Design, they won for Best Original Score by Alexandre Desplat, Best Director with Guillermo del Toro winning, which was his first Oscar win, and they won the big one of the night, Best Picture, making it the first ever sci-fi film to win Best Picture, which I think is really, really cool and very surprising that happened. But I was very surprised that The Shape of Water won Best Picture. I didn't think they would end up giving it to that. I think if you guys heard I think I ended up picking Lady Bird to win in my Oscar picks. That seemed like I was rambling for a long time. Even when I was editing that, I want to apologize for that ramble fest last week on the podcast when I was making my Oscar predictions. I should have shortened that down a lot, but I didn't, and I'm sorry for that. I apologize for that. I would never do that to you guys again. But yeah, I think I ended up just, like, out of the whim just picking up Lady Bird, and even when I was editing, I was like, I didn't want to pick that, but I ended up picking it anyway, so there was that. So yeah, Shape of Water won Best Picture, and again, they won Best Director, Best Original Score, and Production Design. It's huge for Guillermo del Toro, and I was, I don't even know him personally, but I was so proud that he won the Best Picture and Best Director. So yeah, Shape of Water, and of course, like I mentioned on the podcast last week, once that was started picking up awards, and once it won Best Picture, everyone just hopped off the bandwagon and saying, well, it wasn't that good. So there was that. So that's it. Those were the Oscar winners for this year. Now, of course, we wait the Oscar movies that will come out at the end of the year, but we will get to that when we get to it. Now we can enjoy our spring movies. Now we can enjoy our summer movie season and our holiday movies. So we can just wait for that. But we got a lot to get to before we start getting to the Oscar movies for next year. Alright, so that was the movie news items that came out after the podcast went up last week. Let's move on to one of my favorite segments of the podcast, which is Trailer Talk.
Coming soon to theaters.
So we got a lot of teasers this week for movies, and Disney took the top spot with 2 of them. So the first one we're going to talk about is a teaser trailer for Disney's live-action Christopher Robin. The film stars Ian McGregor as an adult Christopher Robin, obviously, the name of the movie is called Christopher Robin, who has, quote, lost his way. This leads to his childhood friends coming to help him remember his past, including Winnie the Pooh, Eeyore, and Tigger. So Winnie the Pooh has been kind of popular as of late. There was a film last year about the creation of Winnie the Pooh, or at least the writers that created Winnie the Pooh, or the writer, I should say. Goodbye Christopher Robin, that's what it was called. And then there was an animated film back in 2011, which was not met with a lot of fanfare and didn't meet up to expectations. The design of Pooh here in this movie, and Christopher Robin, is a little weird. I don't know what it was, but the Winnie the Pooh looked weird. It looked like he was. First of all, it didn't look like he was fully animated. So if you're expecting like this Paddington situation, you can throw that out the window, because he almost actually looks like a doll, like they used a real doll in the movie. So it just looks a little weird. I don't know. It is only a teaser, so there is that to take into consideration. So I don't have too much to say about it, and there wasn't a lot to talk about in the movie anyway, because we don't see anyone else. We just see Christopher Robin. We see Haley Atwell, aka Peggy Carter from the Captain America movies. She's actually in the movie. She plays Christopher Robin's wife, but we only see her very briefly in the teaser. So a lot of it is just Christopher Robin, and he sits in a park, and then all of a sudden you see Winnie the Pooh. And you get a nice little back and forth between the two at the end of the teaser. So I really got nothing else to say about the movie. It was just a teaser. You don't really see too much. So I would have to see more to really make a final decision on it. But from what I've seen so far, it just looks okay. So Christopher Robin opens on August 3rd later this year. So we'll definitely talk more about that when we get to it. Let's move on to a teaser for Illumination's The Grinch. Yes, they're making another Grinch movie. It's an animated Grinch movie, so you can calm down a little bit. Illumination Entertainment, the studio behind the Despicable Me movies, Minions, The Secret Life of Pets, and Sing, have released a teaser for the adaptation of The Grinch. The story follows, of course, the classic story of The Grinch. Doesn't look like they're changing it up too much. The Grinch is voiced by Benedict Cumberbatch, so there is that, who plans to steal Christmas from the citizens of Whoville. Illumination have already tackled a previous Dr. Seuss book and the Lorax, which wasn't met with a lot of fanfare either, so hopefully the Grinch fares better than the Lorax did. Now, the teaser doesn't really feature too much of a story. Of course, we all know the story, so obviously they're going to probably add some stuff in. Don't actually hear a lot of Cumberbatch's voice either. Instead, it really just shows off him being the Grinch. It involves him going to a supermarket at one point and has him just being a Grinch. So there is that. We do see Max in the trailer. He may, or the teaser, I should say. I'm pretty sure he'll probably be a standout for everyone because it is a dog. So there is that. At the moment, Cumberbatch is the only voice actor announced for the film. That's usually is the case for animated films like this. So don't worry too much about that. And The Grinch has a long time before it hits theaters. The Grinch opens later this year on November 9th. So we have quite a ways away to deal with that. But I'm sure we'll be seeing a little bit more about The Grinch probably around the summer. So you can look forward to that. Personally, I don't know if we need another Grinch movie. I mean, just keep showing the old one. And by the old one, I mean the old animated one, not the Jim Carrey one. I know there's fans out there of the Jim Carrey one. I wasn't too much of a fan, but that's just me. That's just me being me. We'll see. All right, let's move on to the other two trailers. Well, one of them is another trailer, and the other one is a teaser. So let's move on to the trailer. Let's break it up a little bit. Let's move on to the trailer, which is a new trailer for Tully, starring Charlize Theron and Mackenzie Davis, which we'll talk about a little later on the podcast. The trailer for the Jason Reitman directed and Diablo Cody written film Tully. The trailer's been released. The duo have done films like Juno and Young Adult, and this film, Tully, will reunite them with their young adult star, Charlize Theron. Sharon stars as a mother of three, including a newborn, who gets a night nanny by her brother named Tully, played by Mackenzie Davis, and the two form an unlikely bond. The film screened at the Sundance Film Festival, where it's said to have gotten a positive reception, and some great reviews have been coming out. There's review blurbs in the trailer itself, so there is that. And I think it's kind of cool to see Theron play something different. I mean, she's playing a mother. I don't think she's ever actually played a mother, at least from what I can remember. So this does look very different for her, and this is even more great exposure from Mackenzie Davis, who has been killing it as of late in everything she's done. So this movie looks good, and you got Mark Duplass in there, you got Ron Livingston in there as well, and again you got Jason Reitman directing the movie. He directed Juno, he directed Young Adult, he also directed Up in the Air, the George Clooney movie, and Diablo Cody, Jennifer's body was a very, very big misstep, but Juno was good. I have not actually seen Young Adult. That was one of the movies that slipped past me for a while, so I definitely want to see that before I see Tully, because I want to get their gauge of how they're going to handle adults, because obviously Juno was a story about teenagers, and Young Adult was a story about not necessarily Young Adult. It was actually Charlize Theron. She plays someone coming back into town, and she meets up with like an old crush or something like that. That's what the movie was about. I think she plays a writer in the movie. I can't remember now, but yeah. But Tully itself looks good. They're saying it's very dramatic, but there's a lot of funny moments in there as well. So I can't wait for it. Hopefully it turns out great. It's got a great cast, so I mean, can't go wrong there. So Tully opens on April 20th. So we'll definitely be talking more about Tully next month for sure. And finally, the last teaser we're going to talk about is a teaser trailer for Disney's Mary Poppins Returns. Now, Disney has released the first teaser trailer for the sequel. Yes, sequel, not a remake, not a reboot, not a reimagining, like a lot of people think it is. Just because they see Mary Poppins Returns, they think it's automatically a reboot or a remake. No, it is a sequel to the 1964 classic. The movie is called, like I mentioned, Mary Poppins Returns. It stars Emily Blunt taking over for Julie Andrews as Mary Poppins, who comes back to the Banks family after they suffer a loss. Michael, played by Ben Whishaw, who voices Paddington Bear, which we talked about earlier. He also plays Q in the new James Bond movies. And Jane, played by Emily Mortimer, are now adults, but Mary, with the help of her friend lamplighter Jack, played by Lin-Manuel Miranda, who we do see in the teaser, has come back to bring some joy and order into the life of Michael's 3 children. So there you go. The movie also stars Meryl Streep, Colin Firth, Angela Lansbury, Julie Walters, and Dick Van Dyke, who was in the original movie. Mary Poppins Returns opens on December 25th later this year. The teaser, there's not a lot going on in the teaser too much. It gives you not really enough to get too excited unless you're a massive fan of Mary Poppins. I haven't actually seen the movie in a long time, but I do remember liking it. So I do want to say that. So there was a lot of kites, and then all of a sudden the kite goes up in the air, and this is when we see Lin-Manuel Miranda's character, and he's playing with a kid, and I assume it's one of Michael's 3 children, like in the synopsis where it's mentioned. And we see a kite, and it's up in the air, and then all of a sudden the kite comes down, and we see Mary Poppins holding on to it, kind of how we saw her leave for the first time. So that was really cool. That was a cool shot. We do see Emily Blunt as Mary Poppins, and we do get to hear she gets like one line in the movie. So there's not a lot going on in the teaser to say too much, but just from the look of what they have of Emily Blunt as Mary Poppins, she looks the role. I mean, if anyone was going to replace Julie Andrews, I know this is blasphemy, but if anyone was going to replace Julie Andrews, Emily Blunt, I think, is a solid choice to replace Julie Andrews. And judging off the teaser, it looks like it was the right call to make. Now, whether this movie is any good, obviously, is up to you guys to decide. I know a lot of people were very upset when they found out they were making a sequel to Mary Poppins Returns, and that Julie Andrews wasn't coming back. Even though Julie Andrews is now older, and considering this as a sequel, it would be really hard. And putting the aging effect on Julie Andrews, probably not the best move. Probably not the best use of money either for a movie like this. So that's just me. Off the teaser itself, I guess I'm excited. I'm not over the moon excited, but we'll see how it turns out. I definitely have to see something else for this, because there wasn't enough to really make a decision too much off the teaser itself. But like I mentioned, Mary Poppins Returns opens again on December 25th later this year. So we got a long ways to go to see more stuff about that and to make a better, clear decision on what we're gonna decide if this movie's good or not. So there's that. All right, let's move on. So that's all the teasers and trailers that came out this week. Obviously, if anything drops, I will put it down below in the description/show notes area, or up on the Facebook page, or up on the Twitter page for the podcast, which is at Movie Pit Podcast. That's at Movie Pit Podcast. Or if you want to go to the Facebook, facebook.com/Movie Pit. That's facebook.com/Movie Pit. But since you already listened to the podcast wherever you are, just go down or up to the description/show notes area and click on the links down there. All right, let's move on to this week's movie news items. Like I mentioned, it was kind of a slow week this week. There are two news items that I will not be mentioning on the podcast. They're up on the Facebook page. That is that the Sopranos movie is getting a prequel film with the creator of The Sopranos coming back to help write the script. So there is that. And Elizabeth Banks is reuniting with James Gunn on an untitled horror film. They worked together previously on James Gunn's directorial debut, which was Slither. So if you remember that movie, she was in it, and that was actually his directorial debut, which has been very cool. So those news items and a few others, if anything else drops small, will be up on the Facebook page. So you guys go check those out. So let's go on to the other news items of the week that we're going to talk about. The first one being Avengers Infinity War. The runtime has been revealed. Now, obviously, it doesn't really matter because that movie can be 3 hours long, 3.5 hours long, and no one would complain. But in case you want to schedule yourselves around the runtime and watching Avengers Infinity War, the runtime was revealed for the movie. It now will be the longest Marvel movie to date because Avengers Infinity War clocks in at 2 hours and 36 minutes. That's right. 2 hours and 36 minutes of pure joy. I don't know why I said that. Infinity War now beats out Captain America Civil War, because that was originally the longest running Marvel movie. That clocked in at 2 hours and 27 minutes. So there is that. And of course, with all these characters involved and 10 years in the making, it has to be about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. So I'm okay with that. So plan accordingly when you buy your tickets for Avengers Infinity War, because Avengers Infinity War will open 1 week early. We mentioned this, I think it was last week. Was it last week already? I can't remember now. Was it last week? I can't remember. I think it was last week. That's Avengers Infinity War will open 1 week because Marvel decided, you know what? We're going to give the fans what they want. We're going to give the fans Infinity War a week early. So they moved it up from its May 4th release date to April 27th. So next month. Plan accordingly, guys. Alright, let's move on to the next movie news item. So we're going to talk about the Terminator. The new Terminator movie has been the news lately, all the way back. Let's rewind the clocks back a little bit. All the way back to January of last year. A new Terminator film was talked about. And at first, original director and creator of the franchise, James Cameron, was said to be overseeing the new project. And then, after some rumors came out, it was confirmed that Deadpool director Tim Miller was going to direct. Now, that was followed by Cameron not only saying that he was planning a new trilogy, but that he would also bring back franchise star Arnold Schwarzenegger, and more importantly, and more awesomely, I know it's not a word, but I'm an English major, so I can make up words, Linda Hamilton was going to come back. That's right, Sarah Connor herself. Now finally, Cameron said that the new Terminator films would ignore all the movies after Terminator 2 Judgment Day, and was then given a release date in September last year for July 26th, 2019. That was the last that we heard of the movie up until now. Now, according to the ArnoldFans.com, who spoke to Arnold Schwarzenegger himself at the 30th anniversary celebration of the Arnold Sports Festival, Arnold told them this about when the movie would start filming, saying, quote, "We are starting to shoot Terminator 6 in June to the middle of October, so I am in that. I'm looking forward to coming back as the T-800 model. It's going to be great with Tim Miller as the director, and Jim Cameron is kind of supervising the whole thing." End quote. I was going to do it in the voice, but I realized that probably would not work at all, so I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to embarrass myself by doing that. So he then went on, Arnold went on, that Hamilton's Sarah Connor is expected to be, quote, a seasoned warrior version of the fan favorite character, and once again said the movie will pick up the events of Terminator 2 and ignore all the events after that. So that was the first set of news that came out. The second set came in later this week, and I told you we would be going back to her, Mackenzie Davis. She is a name you better get used to because she is going to be in a lot of big projects soon. Mackenzie Davis is in negotiations to join the cast of the new Terminator film. Variety broke the news, and according to insiders who told Variety, Davis would be one of the new faces of the rebooted franchise in the vein of Arnold Schwarzenegger's, as they put it, quote, robotic assassin, end quote. The Hollywood Reporter then added that she is a soldier assassin. So with that wording, it sounds like Davis will be playing at least one of the villains, if not the main villain, or at least an antagonizing force against our new heroes. Now, regardless of that, Davis was apparently, and has been apparently, the top choice for the studio and director Tim Miller, but they needed the sign-off from James Cameron in order to do it. Now, Cameron is, of course, developing the new Avatar movies, but he's going to be flip-flopping between Avatar and the Terminator. He's still going to be a producer on the project, but he's just going to be a hands-off producer since he's focusing on Avatar, but he is going to be apparently looking time to time and working with Tim Miller as they film the movie. Now, the search is still on for the heroes of the film to lead the potential new trilogy, because, of course, they are starting a new trilogy. And one of them is said to be a Latina character, which was all good, representing. Yeah, all right, I'm good with that. Now, Davis has made a name for herself after appearing in AMC's *Halt and Catch Fire*. She was also in the Black Mirror episode San Junipero. I think I'm pronouncing that wrong, but that was one of the very it was the one, not this season, but last season, the one with Gugu Mbatha-Raw. So she was in that one. She was also in The Martian, albeit a small role in that. She also had a small role in Blade Runner 2049, and she will be appearing in the upcoming Tully, like we just mentioned. And she also is working on another movie, a horror drama called The Turning, which is based on a novella by Henry James, The Turn of the Screw. So there is that. The Untitled Terminator film aims to start filming, like I mentioned in this, or like Arnold mentioned that I mentioned, will start filming this summer and has a release date of July 26, 2019. Now, of course, the question is, do we need another Terminator movie? I don't know. The Terminator, of course, has a very big fan base, and it has, of course, a lot of staying power because we're still talking about it to this day, and we still talk about it to this day. Now, Terminator Genesis, or however they wanted to pronounce it, was not very good at all, especially considering they gave away what could have been the biggest twist of the franchise and arguably film history of all time. That John Connor, I'm okay with saying this because it was in the trailers, John Connor was a Terminator in Terminator Genesis, which was really dumb they gave that away. But yeah, it wasn't very good. And I am one of the very handful of people out there that at least enjoyed Terminator Salvation. I enjoyed what they were going for. It wasn't all that great of a movie, but I at least enjoyed it for what it was. And of course, Terminator Rise of the Machines, which is Terminator 3, was a disappointment. Let's put it that way. So there is that. But again, do we need another Terminator movie? I don't know. But the fact that this one has Tim Miller as a director, the fact that this one is bringing back Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor is bad. I just hope they don't kill her, because that would be really, really dumb. At least don't kill her in the first movie, because I think a lot of fans will be pissed off. And any chance you have of fans coming back for a sequel to that is dashed away if you kill her in the first movie, which I think they'll do. And it pains me to think that that's actually going to happen. And you got Mackenzie Davis now, so I think that's really cool. I'm sure the new heroes that they introduce will probably be people that we haven't really heard of. They'll probably be unknowns in Hollywood or don't have too many projects under their belts, which is fine. I mean, I think that's kind of the way maybe you want to go for this potential new series. But yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic for a new Terminator movie. That's a term I throw around a lot with this project, but that's just how I feel. I just hope that it's good. I just hope that we'll at least get a decent Terminator movie. And the fact that they're ignoring the events of all the other movies is pretty cool. So we'll see how they plan it out and how they work it out. So, all right, let's move on with Michael Bay. Oh, Michael Bay. So Michael Bay, it's a name that either gets you excited because you like the Transformers movies, or like I just did, makes you sigh in disappointment. But put that aside for the moment. Michael Bay is a name you have to get used to hearing because Michael Bay has just locked down his next 2 movies. Now, according to Variety, Bay will be directing an action film called Six Underground, which has a script by Zombieland and Deadpool screenwriters Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick. The movie's logline is being kept under wraps at the moment, but is said to be an original idea and will start production this summer because the movie aims to be released summer of next year. So that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool that it's being written by them. The fact that it's being done by Michael Bay is kind of disappointing. But the second movie is actually a bit noteworthy because Bay is eyeing to direct an adaptation of David Wilson's novel called Robopocalypse. Now, the story tells of the future where artificial intelligence comes online and threatens a robot apocalypse. Now, this is a kind of a bigger deal and kind of the bigger movie of the 2 for the reason that Robopocalypse was originally going to be directed by Steven Spielberg. And the script was done by Drew Goddard, who had done The Cabin in the Woods and The Martian. And Steven Spielberg has been attached to the project since 2012. This movie's been in the works for a long time. And Spielberg himself pulled the plug on the project back in 2013, saying he would have found a better way to tell the story. And that kind of just stalled the project all around. And that was the last anyone heard of the project. And it was an even bigger deal back then because he had already cast Chris Hemsworth, Anne Hathaway, and Ben Whishaw, which we talked about earlier, and again played Q in the James Bond movies. Since then, obviously Spielberg has moved on to Bridge of Spies, the BFG, The Post, and Ready Player One, which comes out at the end of the month. However, Spielberg will reportedly stay on as a producer, and obviously this will now act as a bit of a reunion between Spielberg and Bay because, of course, Spielberg was an executive producer on the first few Transformers movies. As for Bay, the last thing he directed, of course, was Transformers The Last Knight, which didn't end up too well, let's put it that way. And he was rumored to potentially direct Warner Brothers and DC's Lobo. However, now that he's set these 2 movies, Lobo may be out of the picture for him. Now, I like as for the first movie, Six Underground, again, written by the guys who wrote Zombieland and Deadpool, I'm all for that. The fact that it's being directed by Michael Bay is very, very confusing for me because I just don't want that. But now he wants to direct Robopocalypse. Now, I mean, look, he's leaving one franchise of robots to deal with another franchise of robots. Now, I have not read Robopocalypse. It's on my Kindle. I've been meaning to read it for a while, but other books just kept jumping in front of it. Now I want to read it because I don't want my first experience of Robopocalypse to be tainted by Michael Bay. But I've heard great things about Robopocalypse. I've heard things that maybe it was unfilmable, which is one of the reasons why Steven Spielberg was a little hesitant and wanted to find a different way of doing Robopocalypse, which is the reason why he pulled the plug on it. But I mean, it just and look, Michael Bay. Say what anyone will say about Michael Bay. I am not the biggest Michael Bay fan out there, but I do like Michael Bay's early work. The Rock with Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery, probably one of my favorite films of all time. It is definitely one of my favorite films of all time. Not probably, it is definitely one of my favorite films of all time. You have that. You have Bad Boys. I mean, how can you mess up Bad Boys is great. Bad Boys 2 is, but the first Bad Boys is really awesome. I still like Armageddon. I still watch Armageddon every time it's on TV. So I like that. The Island was pretty good too. I mean, that's kind of when he started going down a little bit for me, but The Island was alright. And credit to Michael Bay where credit is due. You know, he could have stuck around doing, Transformers movies, but he went off and did other stuff. He did Pain and Gain, which was okay. It wasn't all that great of a movie, but it was all right. He did 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi, which was still very Michael Bayian. I kind of saw a little bit of the old him in there, but that was just okay as well. And I want to say he did something else recently, but I can't remember what it was. But was it just 13? I can't remember now. But anyway, hopefully, if he wants to, obviously he has a knack for action, and that's fine. He is, say what you will, Michael Bay, when it's not giant robots fighting each other where you can barely tell who's who. He does have a pretty decent eye for action. So my only hope is that if whatever he does with these two movies, hopefully it turns out great. Michael Bay has become a bit of a punchline with fans, but and I did not like what he's done with the Transformers movies, but I at least am willing to give him a chance when he does something different. So hopefully that is the case for this and for Robopocalypse and Six Underground. We'll see what happens with that. Alright, so let's move on to an update from a story from last week. A pretty big one. Last week it was reported that Kristen Wiig was in talks to join Wonder Woman 2 as the villain Cheetah, which of course caused a lot of divided reactions from fans. Well, you can tune up those reactions again because Patty Jenkins has confirmed that Wiig will be in Wonder Woman 2 as the villain Cheetah. In a tweet, Jenkins said this, saying, quote, "So excited to confirm the most thrilling news. Yes, it is true. So incredibly lucky to welcome the sensationally talented Kristen Wiig to our Wonder Woman family. Can't wait to finally work with one of my favorites, and so excited by what we have planned. Hashtag Cheetah." Now, plot details are of course still under wraps, but it has been rumored for a while that the movie will be set during the Cold War in 1980. And how Cheetah is involved in that is still yet to be seen, but Jenkins has been working on the script with Jeff Johns and Dave Callaham for a while now, so there is that. When we reported on the news last week, it was reported then that Jenkins had been eyeing Wiig for a while now and was her top choice for the role, so I doubt Warner Brothers would want to do anything to make Jenkins a little upset or angry and potentially lose her as a director for really, let's face it, the biggest project Warner Brothers and the DCU have done so far. Now that said, we don't know which version of Cheetah we're going to get. The character is a mantle character that has been passed down to different characters. One of them was a male, and the only male that has taken the mantle of Cheetah so far, but one of the most popular ones, and the one who is currently the Cheetah in the comics. By the way, if you hear a banging sound, that's there's doing some housework. One of the more popular runs from the character is Barbara Ann Minerva / Cavendish. She goes by two names. She uses different aliases in the comics. So she is one of the most popular Cheetah characters in one of the current run, and the current Cheetah in the current run of the comics. She is an archaeologist and an heiress, and in one story, she's actually an associate to Diana Prince, aka Wonder Woman. Now, they're taking things from the comics. That might be the best bet of who Wiig will be playing in the movie. And in the comics, she actually does use the other Cheetah characters as aliases, especially in the current run. So, that said, the other Cheetahs that Wiig could potentially play, if they don't go with Barbara Ann Minerva or Barbara Ann Cavendish, is Priscilla Rich. She is a woman that's basically a rich woman. She's raised by money with an inferiority complex and a split personality. She later had a niece who actually picked up the mantle by the name of Deborah Domain, and she has a friendship with Diana and Wonder Woman, but later gets brainwashed and turns into a villain, and again takes up the mantle of Cheetah from her aunt. So those are the characters that she can possibly play. Again, I think Minerva or Cavendish, whichever version they decide to use, is probably the best bet of who we will be playing. Gal Gadot will of course return to reprise her role as Diana Prince / Wonder Woman. Filming is expected to start sometime this year, probably later this year, because Wonder Woman 2 does currently have a release date of November 1st, 2019. So like I mentioned last week when we talked about this, I'm a huge fan of Wiig, and I kind of liked the decision that they're going with. It's something different, something that we haven't seen before, and it's also something that I think could be a little bit refreshing. So I'm all for Kristen Wiig being in the movie, and it's Patty Jenkins. She's the one that wanted her, so obviously she knows more about the movie than we do and the approach they're taking. So I'm not going to doubt Patty Jenkins when it comes to Wonder Woman, because look what she gave us in the first movie. So if she wants Kristen Wiig as Cheetah, I think we're in for something really, really cool. So, but that's just my opinion. Alright, let's move on to the next movie news item. Vin Diesel is officially set to star in Bloodshot. Sony Pictures has finalized the deal with Vin Diesel to star in the adaptation of the Valiant comic book series Bloodshot. The comic followed Angelo Mortelli, I think that's how you pronounce the name, a ruthless killer for the mob who is set up by his bosses and framed for a murder. He goes into witness protection, but is betrayed by the agents guarding him and kidnapped and forcibly put into an experimental program, which his body is infected by nanites. They erase his memory. The process erases his memory and leaves his body as a weapon with superhuman strength and healing powers, and goes on a quest to find out who he really is. The reports say the film will be in tone of the classic 1980s tentpole movies like, quote, RoboCop, Terminator, and Total Recall. This is the first of a potential start of a franchise in a connected universe with Valiant's other comic book property, Harbinger. Now, the original idea, although it's not mentioned in this report, could be to have 7 films in the franchise that leads up to an epic conclusion in the 7th film. So it could be interesting to see if they're going to go that far or not, or maybe they tone that down a little bit, realizing that 7 films are a bit ridiculous. But of course, Vin Diesel has history with making 7 film franchises, Fast and the Furious, of course, being in that one. The deal, speaking of Fast and the Furious, the deal will act as kind of a reunion for Fast and the Furious, because Diesel will work with franchise producer Neil H. Moritz in the movie. So Neil H. Moritz will be producing this for Sony Pictures. Dave Wilson, a longtime collaborator of Deadpool director Tim Miller and creative director at their Blur Studios, which did the intro for The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo remake here in America, will be making his directorial debut off the script by Eric Hessier, who wrote Arrival a couple of years ago. Sony Pictures hopes to start shooting in July, but no projected release date has been given. But again, since they're going to start filming in July, it could be a possibility that we can see this in late 2019, maybe even early 2020. Just my guesstimate of what that can be. Of course, like Vin Diesel. I mean, it's Vin Diesel. So I mean, we can probably expect what's going to happen here. But maybe it'll be good. Who knows? I actually have not read any Bloodshot comics. So if anyone has read any Bloodshot comics out there, you are more than welcome to let me know if that's a good pick or not. All right, finally, let's move on to our last movie news item of the day. There's some editing tricks here, so it did start off as a slow week, but not anymore. Todd Phillips, and by the way, this should be considered a massive rumor at the moment. If it turns out to be true, it should be interesting to see how they pull this off. Now, according to The Wrap, the Todd Phillips directed Joker origin movie that is not connected to the DC Extended Universe will take cues from the famed 1988 graphic novel The Killing Joke by Brian Boland and Alan Moore. The report from The Wrap says, quote, the origin movie will portray the clown prince of crime as a failed comedian in the 1980s who goes on to become a Gotham crime boss after bombing with audiences. That is their wording, not mine. Now, it was previously reported that Todd Phillips, by the way, the director of the Hangover movies, he also directed War Dogs that came out, it was last year or 2 years ago with Jonah Hill and Miles Teller. So he will co-write the film as well with Scott Silver, who wrote The Fighter with Mark Wahlberg. And they intended it to be a gritty, grounded spin. That was the wording they used of the Joker character set in a Scorsese-esque Gotham underworld set in the 80s. So that was the wording they would use, and then at the time when it was reported, Martin Scorsese was said to potentially be a producer on the movie. Now, additionally, the film would also include some nods. This comes from the report, of the rep report, that will include some nods of Scorsese's The King of Comedy, which featured Robert De Niro playing a deluded wannabe comedian whose ambitions lead him down a manic criminal path. So you can see the connection there between these two things. So that's what it was. The last we heard of the project before this was that Joaquin Phoenix was in talks to play the Joker, but the deal is still not yet complete, and we'll probably have to wait a little bit longer to see if that actually turns out to be true, because the rap reports that they are pushing back the start date on production, which was supposed to start late this year, to accommodate for rewrites. So it's a possibility this movie will not get started until next year. And who knows if Joaquin Phoenix will still be interested once they do the rewrites and everything like that. Or maybe they're doing the rewrites to accommodate for Joaquin Phoenix to come on board. The project has been a bit of a debate among some fans. Some fans like the idea of standalone stories that are connected to the DCU, which is something that Warner Brothers has been trying to do more of, and they plan on doing more of these kind of stories. They wanted to start with the Joker, since he is one of the most famous characters of the DC Comics universe, while others don't like the idea because it basically means that Warner Brothers may be abandoning the DCU, or they're putting their focus on movies that will take away from their main focus of the DCU, especially considered how the DCU is at the moment. But of course, now the question becomes, will fans fully embrace the movie, now knowing that they will be taking cues, or at least tackling at least something from The Killing Joke, which again, The Killing Joke is, if you ask any fan who reads comic books, especially when it comes to DC, especially when it comes to Batman, or it comes with the Joker, one of their favorite arcs will be The Killing Joke. Or it should be on that list, because it's a very good graphic novel. Now, The Killing Joke was made into an animated movie and it was interesting because the animated movie it wasn't very well received by fans, mainly because they added something to make the movie longer. Because the graphic novel isn't that long, and it's not that long for an animated movie. So what the animators did is they added this little side story at the beginning of the movie, and then after that was over, they went on to fully create The Killing Joke. I did not see the animated movie, but again, I just heard a lot of people weren't very happy with it. So there is that. I intend to watch it, but I do like the graphic novel. If you haven't read the graphic novel, even if you don't read a lot of comic books, even if you don't like the Joker or DC or whatever, it's a really good story that I highly recommend you read. It's a little bit disturbing, and I think that's one of the reasons why fans have grown to like it, because well, first of all, it's very well written, but it's one of the very what's the word I'm looking for? It's one of the very not popular. I already said that. I can't think of the word, but it is something that I think fans will have you try to read if you haven't read anything. So I don't know. I mean, this is interesting. I mean, on one hand, you have, like I mentioned, it's very divided amongst fans. So on one hand, you have the fans who like this idea. But on the other hand, you have fans who don't like this idea. I'm kind of in the middle. I didn't like Jared Leto's performance as a Joker, and I'm not alone on that in Suicide Squad. So it would make me a little bit upset knowing that we would potentially have a great performance as the Joker, or for the Joker, with Joaquin Phoenix, and there'll be fans saying, "Oh, I want to watch that, and I want them to add that to the DC universe and make that canon or something like that." Then on the other hand, you'll have fans out there who aren't like us, who don't read the news online. So there'll be fans out there that say that, "Oh, maybe this is maybe this is connected. Is the Joker immortal because it's connected to DCU, or isn't it connected to DCU?" So there'll be fans like that. Those same fans, of course, are the ones who don't understand why Spider-Man for a long time was not part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or why the X-Men aren't part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe at all. So it's very confusing. It's a very debated subject, and it's something that we should be talking about. Is something that not Universal. That's I'm looking at a Universal logo right now. By the way, that's why I said it. Is there something that Warner Brothers should be considering? Is that something they should be considering? Is that something they should be doing? I honestly don't know. On one hand, like I mentioned, I like the idea of kind of having this standalone movie for the Joker. I mean, the Joker is probably worth a standalone movie, especially if you're doing The Killing Joke. But on the other hand, I don't know if it's worth the time for them to be doing other stuff while they can be focusing on the DCU, which is I'm not gonna say shambles, but it's something that they should be working on, because that's probably that should be their main focus. That's something that has been very, very talked about amongst the fans. Some fans don't like the way they're handling the DCU, and some fans are okay with the way they're handling it. But I think Warner Brothers should be putting their focus on the DCU. Personally, I think that they should be working on that. I think they should be working on making it more cohesive and better than it is right now. But for whatever reason, if they can lock down Joaquin Phoenix for this movie, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I'm going to go watch it, and hopefully I will enjoy it. So it doesn't matter what my opinion is, it matters what your opinion is. So let me know in whatever outlet you can, what do you think of Joaquin Phoenix and Todd Phillips and Warner Bros. Potentially tackling The Killing Joke? Now, this isn't a direct adaptation. This should be known. It's not a direct adaptation. They said they're taking cues from The Killing Joke. So it's not a direct adaptation of The Killing Joke. So, does that affect your decision of knowing and of how you feel about the movie? Because that's a big one, because it's not a direct adaptation of The Killing Joke. They're taking cues from it, so it's their own story, along with homage to the King of Comedy. But I don't know. It's again very debatable. A lot of sides and a lot of questions to be asked. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. So that's it. That is all the movie news for this week. Let's move on to the movies coming out in theaters this weekend.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Alright, like I mentioned at the top of the podcast, we have a lot of movies coming out this weekend. So if you say, there's nothing to watch, you're lying, because there's a lot of stuff to watch this weekend. So let's start off with the limited releases, which we have two, by the way. The first one is The Leisure Seeker, based off a novel, I should say. A runaway couple of the same name, but the book is also called The Leisure Seeker. A runaway couple go on an unforgettable journey in the faithful old RV that they call The Leisure Seeker. The film stars Donald Sutherland and Helen Mirren as that runaway couple. For the first time, I saw a TV spot. That was the first time I knew about this movie. I saw a TV spot. And, I don't know, it's not targeted toward me, but, I like Donald Sutherland, I like Helen Mirren, so I guess, maybe. So there's that. The other limited release coming out this weekend is Thoroughbreds. Two upper-class teenage girls in suburban Connecticut rekindle their unlikely friendship after years of growing apart. Together, they hatch a plan to solve both of their problems, no matter what the cost. The movie stars Anya Taylor-Joy, Olivia Cooke, Paul Sparks, and the late Anton Yelchin. The movie is said to be getting some good it's getting some good reviews, and it looks pretty good. People are saying it's really good, so I've actually have been looking forward to this since I first saw the trailer. And the cast is great. Anya Taylor-Joy from Split, The Witch. If you watched that, she was in those two movies. Olivia Cooke, I saw her for the first time in Bates Motel, the A&E series that was based off Psycho, which was kind of a prequel series to Psycho. So I saw her in that. I thought she was great in that. She was also great in Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, which was also based off a novel. I'm not saying Thoroughbreds was based off a novel, but she was in that was it just happened to be based off a novel, Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl. She was great in that. She was absolutely fantastic in that. Paul Sparks has been pretty good. He pops in every now and then. He was the reporter of, was it 3 seasons ago now, of House of Cards, and he's had little projects here and there. If you saw for whatever reason, this is the last, because I just happened to see him, that The Greatest Showman, the journalist. If you saw The Greatest Showman, the journalist that Hugh Jackman talks to throughout the movie, that's him. And he's done a bunch of other great stuff, and Paul Sparks is always kind of reliable, and he pops up in all these kind of small roles, and he's top notch. But of course, the late Anton Yelchin passed away. What was it? It's been a few years now, right? I think it's been a few years now since he's passed away, but this was one of his last movies. I think he has another one coming out, I think later this year, or on video on demand or something like that, but this is probably going to be one of his last movies that hits theaters, and everyone's saying that he's great in this. So, and Anton Yelchin was always great. So that doesn't really surprise me too much. So Thoroughbreds, if you want to go check that out, I highly recommend you do. So let's move on from the limited releases to the wide releases. Like I mentioned, we have a lot of wide releases this week. The first one is The Hurricane Heist, which is probably one of the most ridiculous movies that's going to come out this year. Directed by Rob Cohen, the director of Triple X and The Fast and the Furious, the first one. Thieves attempt a massive heist against the U.S. Treasury as a Category 5 hurricane approaches one of its mint factories. The Hurricane Heist stars Maggie Grace and Toby Kebbell. I don't know what they have over Toby Kebbell and Maggie Grace, and Ben Cross is also in this movie, and Ryan Katine, I think that's how you say it, or something along those lines. He was in True Blood. I can't remember who he plays in True Blood. Not that I watched it, but I know he's in True Blood, or was in True Blood. But it looks so ridiculous, and for whatever reason, I want to go watch it. I think I just want to go watch it because it just looks so ridiculous. Oh, it just if you have not seen the trailer for The Hurricane Heist, if somehow you have avoided all of the TV spots that I've seen for The Hurricane Heist, you need to do yourself a favor and watch the trailer, because it is one of the most ridiculous things you will ever see. But damn it, if you don't come out watching that trailer being like, man, I kind of want to watch that, I think we're just on different levels, man, because I kind of want to go watch it. I'm going to go watch it. It's probably not going to be any good, but I'm going to go watch it. So the next movie is The Strangers, Prey at Night. The long-awaited sequel for The Strangers. A family staying in a secluded mobile home park for the night are visited by 3 masked psychopaths to test their every limit. The Strangers, Prey at Night stars Christina Hendricks. I don't always have problems saying her name. Bailey Madison, Lewis Pullman, and Martin Henderson. I was a massive, massive fan of The Strangers. And for those of you who need to remind, The Strangers, Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman? I think it's Scott Speedman. The two of them star as a couple, and they're being terrorized by 3 people who have masks on, trying to get into their house and just making their lives a living hell. So I can't remember what year it came out, but I remember going to go watch that movie on a Friday night with one of my friends. We drove in, it was a packed theater, and it was one of the only real times that I can remember having a genuine feel of terror watching a horror movie in a theater, because I've had that feeling when I'm at home. Well, that's because my house gets really creepy at night. But I remember watching The Strangers in a theater, and it's one of those movies where I don't watch often. Because it's generally terrifying. Like, there's some jump scares throughout the whole movie, but it's all about it's all about like just seeing. There's no wasted shot in the movie, so anything you see on screen is there for a reason, and that's kind of the reasons why I love The Strangers. And I know this movie was supposed to be made a while ago. There was a script being floating around online for people to read that somehow got out. And I don't know if they changed. I assume they probably changed a lot of the script, or at least most of the script, from the one that was bouncing online to what we're what we're going to see here, but the mobile home aspect was something that was in that script that was floating around. So I'm looking forward to this. Like I mentioned, I was a huge fan of The Strangers. The Strangers is probably in my at least top 15 horror movies of all time. So I was a huge fan of that, so I can't wait to see what they do with here. It's getting some mixed reviews from people. I think fans of the original, I know at least people reviewers that I at least like their opinion on, that were fans of the original movie. Some of them have been giving it positive reviews, and even some of the ones that I follow that weren't fans of the original were very mixed on it. So it's kind of it's in the middle somewhere. So all right, let's move on to the next wide release, which is Gringo. It is a dark comedy mixed with white knuckle action and dramatic intrigue. That's from the plot synopsis. Explores the battle of survival for businessman Harold, played by David Ollowell. I think that's how you pronounce it. I've pronounced it Ollowell, and I've pronounced it Ollowello, but I don't know how he pronounced it. I've heard him say his last name for whatever reason. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, it's him. When he finds himself crossing the line from law-abiding citizen to wanted criminal. Gringo also stars Charlize Theron, which we talked about earlier with Tully, Joel Edgerton, Amanda Seyfried, or Seyfried, however you want to pronounce that, her last name. I've heard people pronounce it two different ways. Thandie Newton and Charlotte Copley from, of course, District 9 and Chappie and Elysium and all that. All those good stuff. So this looks funny. I remember watching the trailer for the first time, and it just happened to be the Red Band trailer they released. And I just laughed my ass off, like genuinely laughed my ass off when I watched the trailer. It's this amazing cast of, and it's something different that we've never seen. I've never seen David Ollowello, I'll just pronounce it that way. I haven't never seen before. He's a little bit over the top, and I kind of like that. He's usually playing these very big dramatic characters and drama roles. Of course, he played Martin Luther King of all people in Selma. I mean, there's you see that, and then you see him in this. Like, that can't be the same person, but it is. So there is that. And of course, you got Charlize Theron on there. You got Joel Edgerton on there, kind of playing like these, just like these low-life business people that are his bosses. Amanda Seyfried's in there. And you got Charlotte Copley playing it up a little bit, hamming it up a little bit there as well. So I kind of like it. So I'm really looking forward to this one, and I have been since I saw the first trailer. So that's Gringo. And the last and finally last wide release we'll talk about is Disney's A Wrinkle in Time, based off the beloved novel of the same name and directed by Ava DuVernay, who directed Selma. Hey, little connection there. After the disappearance of her scientific father, three peculiar beings send Meg, her brother, and her friend to space in order to find him. A Wrinkle in Time stars Storm Reed, Levi Miller, Chris Pine, Gugu Mbatha-Raw, Zach Galifianakis, Reese Witherspoon, Mindy Kaling, and Oprah Winfrey. This one is definitely getting some mixed reviews. A lot of people are saying visually it's very good. Story-wise, it's just okay. So there is that. And this is an adaptation that there was an adaptation of A Wrinkle in Time before. I can't remember what year it was, but now they're doing it again. And of course, Ava DuVernay, this is her first big budget studio movie. She did a lot of indies, or Selma wasn't a big studio movie. It was basically an independent movie. So this is her first big budget studio movie, and people were very excited for this, and the cast is have been very proud of what they've done, and hopefully it turns out great. Again, visually, people are saying it's great. Story-wise, they're saying it's just a little okay. It's meh in a lot of cases. So it's definitely going to be one of those movies that you'll have to go watch and see how you feel. I did not read the novel. I have not read the novel, and for a while I didn't know what the novel was. I have heard about A Wrinkle in Time, but I never really dug into it and tried to find out what it was about. And then I found out what it was about once the movie was getting made. And it sounds interesting. It sounds pretty cool, and hopefully it turns out that way. It's a very old novel as well, so there'll probably be things in there that people will be like, yeah, they got that from something else. No, that thing that you're thinking about probably got it from A Wrinkle in Time. So I don't know. It's one of those projects where I was kind of reluctant on for a while to go watch, and then I saw the trailers come out, and they were pretty good. They convinced me to go watch it. But I don't know, I'm still kind of on the fence. Not because of what people are saying about it, just I'm still just kind of on the fence. It's not one of those things that's jumping out to me. I definitely want to go watch something else before A Wrinkle in Time. And no, it's not a hurricane heist. I can wait to watch a hurricane heist. But yeah, so there you go. Those are your wide releases. Once again, we have Disney's A Wrinkle in Time. We have the dark comedy Gringo. We have The Strangers Prey at Night and The Hurricane Heist. Those are your wide releases. Your limited releases are The Leisure Seeker and Thoroughbreds. So check your local theaters to see if they're playing that. And of course, if you found nothing of that excites you can always go watch Black Panther again, because Black Panther's still in theaters. Or anything else that's still in theaters. Game nights, I recommend you go watch Game Night if you want to go laugh. I mean, if you want to go laugh, you could probably go watch Gringo, but if you want to go laugh on something else, Game Nights, I highly recommend that. And yeah, that's all I got for you guys. So that's it. That's all we got. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. I highly appreciate it. Obviously, if anything big drops, you can go check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/moviepit. That's facebook.com/moviepit. Unless you're listening to this somewhere, there's a link down below in the description/show notes area. You can just go click on that and go give me a like over there. You can be up to date on all the movie news, all the big noteworthy news items, and all little small stuff here and there as well, and the movie trailers that drop throughout the week. Basically giving you an idea what we're going to talk about on the podcast. However, I do go more into detail on the podcast than I do on the Facebook page. So there is that to take into consideration. All the way down there, you might as well go check out some of the other stuff. Like I mentioned, the links to the trailers and teasers will be down there as well. While you're down there, you can also go click on my WordPress account, the link to my WordPress account anyway, where I do spoiler-free written reviews. So no spoilers, basically. No spoilers in my reviews. I haven't written anything in a while. I was going to do a review for Game Night, and I was going to do a review for some of the movies that came out this weekend. What the hell did I watch this week? I already forgot what I watched. Death Wish. I watched Death Wish. Not very good. Don't recommend it. But I was going to do... So I haven't been doing any reviews on that. I'm sorry. I have been watching movies. I just haven't been doing reviews. This week's probably going to be no different. I'm actually going to probably just sit at home this weekend. I know there's a lot of stuff to watch. I could definitely watch it during the week, but I'm just going to sit at home probably this weekend. So there'll be no reviews up there either. So forgive me for that. But yeah. What else is down there? My handle to my personal Twitter and Instagram is down there. If you want to go follow me personally, that's there. But again, if you want to follow the Twitter page for the podcast, which I am now trying to update which I think I've done a pretty decent job. I mean, again, this was a slow week, so it wasn't really like, I'm gonna go update the Twitter page. Oh, that's right, there's nothing out. So the Twitter page, I will be updating that a lot more. I will be doing more polls so you guys can get involved in the podcast in your own little ways. So that's Movie Pit Podcast. That's at Movie Pit Podcast, all one word. There's a handle to that down below in the description/show notes area as well. And also right down there, Entertainment Weekly released the covers for their magazine with from the different characters of Avengers Infinity War. And those are pretty cool. So I'll put a link down below. You can go click on that. Of course, you can try to find your own copies of those. They're pretty good copies. Very good looks of all the characters. We also see Iron Man. This is the interesting one. Iron Man with wings. Looks like he has wings in the Iron Man suit, or at least a variation of the Iron Spider legs of the Iron Spider suit for Spider-Man. That's kind of how I saw it, but everyone's calling it wings. I didn't really get a good look at the picture. I just saw it on my phone and I was about to drive, so I couldn't really, look at it in detail. But there's that. So if you want to go see that, there's a link down there. It's a slideshow, so all I gotta do is click on the arrow and go check that out. And yeah, that's it. That's all I got for you guys. So thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. I really appreciate it. I am your host, Christian. This has been the Movie Pit Podcast, where we talk about all the latest breaking movie news that has come out throughout the week. Be sure to catch us next week, where we talk about more movie news, more trailers, and of course, more movies that are coming out in theaters for you guys to enjoy. So that's it. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you guys so much once again for listening to the podcast. Be good people. Be safe. Have fun this weekend. And as always, go watch some movies.
Whoop whoop! Yeah! Give it up! Movies!